Welcome everyone to the Planning and Investment Committee meeting of the Central Hawke's Bay District Council. To start today's proceedings, would you all please like to stand, and together we'll do the opening karakia, if you're able. Whakatake taho ki te uru, whakatake taho ki te tonga, kia mai kene kene ki uta, kia mai tara tara ki te rai, e he akahana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu. And just like to start the meeting with a huge shout out to Waipawa M&D. They had their opening night of Les Mis last night, which was absolutely phenomenal. If you don't have your tickets yet, please go in and get them. Don't miss out. It is amazing. So apologies today. We've got Councillor Gerard and Po Whirinaki Piri online, and we have an apology from Councillor Amelia Nepiapatu. Would someone like to move that they be accepted, please? Councillor Lawrence, seconded Councillor Byrne. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Any declarations of conflict of interest today? Just a reminder that you can bring those up at any stage of the meeting. Confirmation of minutes from the 18th of June 2026. Main things in there were the waste minimisation and what are the other M's for? A waste plan? Management. I had a senior moment there. And a non-rateable income funding framework. Anything else, any comments about those minutes, or would somebody like to move them? Okay, Councillor Anand, seconded Councillor Lawrence. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Into the resolution monitoring report. Again, the two in here were waste minimisation and management plan, and the non-rateable income. Any comments or questions about that? Those resolutions. Would someone like to move that we receive and note the report? Foley, seconded Councillor Anand. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against. So going into the asset management policy. Mr. Kinvig, welcome to the table.
Morning, councillors. The purpose of this report is to seek adoption of the revised asset management policy. The policy sets the governance expectations for how council manages its physical assets, and it covers all stages of asset management from planning through to disposal of our assets. Why this document matters is this is a top-level policy for council's asset management framework. It gives elected members and staff a clear basis for decisions around service levels, risk and affordability, and long-term value for the community. It's particularly important at this point in time as we prepare the long-term plan for the 2027-37 period. You'll see from the policy that there are some key principles, and I will just quickly run through them. Protect public health and safety, one of the most important ones at the top of the list. Engaging early with the community and Mana Whenua. Prioritising critical assets, taking a whole of life view on decisions. Use evidence-based decision making, so that's kind of linked to better quality data and improving data over time to enable those evidence-based decisions to be made. Building resilience or right-sized resilience, and taking an adaptive approach to climate change. And the policy is also clear about what council will do, defer or stop when funding or capacity is constrained. So the policy, you'll see that the policy applies to transport, solid waste, community and recreational facilities, parks and reserves and other council property. You'll see that the water services assets are excluded because they will transfer to the Hawke's Bay Water Services Council controlled organisation from the 1st of July 2027. In the report, I'm recommending that council, the committee, approve option 1, which is to adopt the revised policy. And you'll see that the next steps, subject to that decision, will finalise and publish the policy, communicate it to all staff that are involved in assets and the management of our assets, and use it as guiding principles to finalise the asset management plans, as well as the infrastructure strategy, which will form part of the long-term plan. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gummick. Any questions? Still inhaling the document. Just have one. We often have a fine line between governance and representative governance, and that we're so close to our constituents a lot of the time. What are the processes in this that will help this governance table react or not react to all the calls we get?
Yeah, I think when you look at the asset management policy, it kind of sets out the current context in the actual policy around, we're in a highly constrained environment. We've got a lot to look after. The transport network is a good example of that, where we're not renewing as much as what we should be doing. So that the importance of making trade-offs at all levels, I guess, from governance through to at the operational coalface is becoming increasingly important. As I said in my summary, focus in this policy is around focusing on critical assets. And recognizing, and critical assets are those that have greater economic value or are used by more people. So there's some really good examples of Patangata Bridge that we're talking about later today is a really good example of a bridge that has around $16 million per annum of economic value to this district. So a really critical asset, our largest asset on the roading network. So it's those trade-offs. And having to make those decisions at the governance level to advise staff on decisions, but also at the operational coalface, and accepting from time to time there are some what I would call manual overrides as well, where elected members they want a particular community outcome, and so it's not formulaic. It's not just 1 + 1 = 2 on every decision. It's a judgment as well. Hopefully that answers your question.
Lennon.
Yeah, mine is a timing thing, and it's probably more directed to Mr. McLeod. So we're in public workshop later this afternoon. We're talking about financial strategy and infrastructure strategy, which obviously is referred to in the write-up for this. Is there a reason why this comes before that? I'm just trying to get my head around the timing. We haven't really had the chance to talk about and really align and really nail in on the strategy stuff, but yet we're now zeroing in on a policy. Or is this a policy that can be reviewed should there be impending changes coming in the next year?
Policies can
lots of bigger than that. There's a fair bit of power outage all around. Puck's had power loss, and so is Takapo, so something's gone.
We didn't have power loss though, we only had Wi-Fi.
And whether the generator kicked in, maybe.
Yeah, might be that generator.
Yeah.
As far as I know, what Central Lines are doing wasn't supposed to affect this building. It was going to affect our Portacom. So if there is a wider power outage, that might explain what's going on.
Okay, apologies. We're now back online, we believe, where there's been a bit of a power issue in parts of Central Hawke's Bay, which affected us as well. So welcome back to the Planning and Investment Committee. Breathe. We had a question from Councillor Anand about why this is coming up now and not or after the strategy that we're doing this afternoon.
So I think this has been built around that work that's happened on the strategy. That was the first order. We do have quite a compressed time frame. This is the next order below that strategy work. So it's been built based on your work there, but also around the technical subject matter of it. The next phase, this will inform the workshop we've got this afternoon around financial and infrastructure strategy. There needs to be, I think Mark got goalposts to aim at in the infrastructure strategy, and this is sort of setting a lot of those, and then it'll track through into the work programs after those strategies, and the AMPs come in below those strategies as well. So there is a hierarchy: strategy, policy, infrastructure, financing strategies, asset and activity management plans, and then building into work programs for the LTP. That sort of.
Yeah, and just to add to you, Chair, I've written the policy in a way that keeps it broad enough that it doesn't kind of nail anything down specifically. It is a framework and a set of principles that guides how council and eventually, ultimately how officers kind of design those asset management plans and implement at an operational level. So safety, for example, safety being a top priority in everything that we do, irrespective of constraints, we need to aim for safety being a priority. That's an example of how that would play out across everything that we do.
In terms of timing, if anything was to change when we do the finance and infrastructure strategy later this morning, that will likely come under the Chief Executive's minor administrative and editorial amendments. One would assume that if we muck around with the infrastructure strategy now, it's not a minor amendment.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I think that it's stated in the paper that the Chief Executive can make minor amendments as long as the intent of the policy remains the same.
I was prompted to a question when you talked about safety being at the top of everything that we do, and just wanted to push back a little bit on people's beliefs, rightly or wrongly, of traffic safety in terms of where potholes are, where roads are unsafe to drive on, etc. How do those balance out in the?
That's acknowledging that we've got a vast transport network. We've got 1,265 kilometres of network. We've got roads of varying significance depending on their economic value and the volumes of traffic. So the exposure is different. The exposure of risk on a road that's got a couple of thousand vehicles a day is very different to a road that's got less than 25 vehicles a day on it. So that's where the prioritisation of investment comes in, and so where officers are making those judgments based on evidence, based on data, and based on the hierarchy of our transport network to make those right-sized decisions, because we can't, if we spread that money evenly across all roads, all parts of the network, we won't achieve the outcomes, the safety outcomes or the economic outcomes that this council is aiming to achieve through its strategy.
Any further questions, Mayor Foley?
Thank you, Chair. I guess just to sum up, if you like, does it, in your mind, does it encapsulate the council's strategic direction, the new one, and written in a way that you think sets up, from the staff point of view, but ultimately the organisation to deliver those?
Yes, through you, Chair, you'll see that as part of the policy, I've incorporated the latest council's strategy, the strategic direction, and those keywords around affordability, having to make trade-offs to maintain affordability for our community, are embedded throughout the document, and you will see later as well that they're embedded in the asset management plans, and they're embedded throughout the financial strategy and the infrastructure strategy. So everything that council's decided in terms of its strategic direction flows through all the documents right down to the coalface of how staff operate on a day-to-day basis.
Any further questions for Mr. Kimbo? Thank you. I'll open the floor for debate. Any comments?
To move if
Option
option
1 is the recommendation staff.
adopt the AMP, authorise the chief executive to approve minor administrative or editorial amendments that do not change the intent of the policy.
You have a seconder? I'll second that. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say well done to Mr. Kinvig and the staff for this updated document and policy. It gives me a lot of confidence that with the also updated council strategy that we're about to talk to later on this morning as well, that it puts the council in a good place to implement those strategic outcomes across this policy. So happy to support this.
I'd just like to, we've been shown this governance level policy in open workshops, and as Mr. Kinvig said, it forms the basis for our framework, I think, and this is quoting a little bit from the report. We can't keep our current levels of service across all our assets without a significant change in our funding settings. More money isn't coming. We will need to look at what we will do, what we will delay, what we will stop, and the risk and level and service change we're willing to accept. And part of accepting this, I believe, is us taking a leadership role in the community, telling them about those trade-offs and making sure that we do not tail wag the dog or be reactive and come back to this policy and come back to our strategy all the time, because we are going to have to make these trade-offs going forward. But hopefully on the same hand, it also gives us a consistent framework to for our asset decisions going forward over their lifetime, with obviously Batonga Bridge and other decisions coming up. Anyone else like to speak? Right of reply, Mayor Foley?
No thanks, Chair.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Proposed name of Ruakura for Russell Park, Mr. Marshall. Mr. Kinvig, welcome to the table.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and councillors. Just quickly to introduce the paper, it's asking council to approve public consultation on the proposed name Ruakura for the park currently known as Russell Park. So it's not seeking a decision today, it's to propose a clear and transparent community conversation. The proposal aligns with the Russell Park Master Plan and the Cultural Impact Assessment, which identify the importance of better recognising the cultural history and identity of the site. And consultation will allow community to understand the background to the name, acknowledge long-standing connections that people may have with the current name or the proposed name, and to provide feedback to council before they formally decide whether to formally approve and gazette the name. Happy to take any questions.
I want to start the ball rolling. Point 51 talks about Russell Park including Recreation Reserve. Isn't all of Russell Park Recreation Reserve?
Through you, under the Reserves Act, the classification, different land parcels have different classifications. There's actually some land at Russell Park that's fee simple.
That's right. Yeah. Does anyone need fee simple explained?
It would be helpful.
Okay. Could you please give us a brief rundown on what the difference is?
Yes. So if it's classified as recreation reserve under the Reserves Act, then there's legislative requirements around the purpose, what that site can be used for. That must be for recreational purposes, and then also it impacts the reserve management. It's required to have a reserve management plan. Fee simple, there's less restrictions in place around what the site can be used for. Probably in an ideal world, it would all be classified as recreation reserve.
No, Councillor Byrne.
Through you, I'm just wondering, obviously we've been given the cultural impact assessment. I'm wondering, I tried to search for it online. find it. So I'm wondering how that will shape the communications with a potential name change. How are we, I mean, is it available to the public? How are we going to use that?
Yeah, through you, Chair, I'll just check if Ash is aware. I know we've been dealing with Pam, who's online, having conversations around what is allowed to be shared and what isn't. I believe there's an understanding that we can share information from the report.
So we can't share the CIA in its entirety, but they have given us a document with historical points from the CIA that we can share on the consultation page.
We may actually be able to share the full thing now. I'll just double check with that, but I had a conversation with Mr. Hutana the other day. So we'll just confirm that, but that's my understanding, is that we will be able to make that available.
Councillor Moynihan.
Yes, through the chair. Did council consider having a dual name for this park? So we retain the Russell name and also introducing a Maori name that reflects mana whenua.
Through the chair, that conversation did occur, and that was discussed with the authors of the cultural impact assessment. There was some opposition to that, given some of the history of the site and the way that the land came into the Russell family. So in line with the views of the authors, we're not proposing that through this report.
Councillor Byrne.
Through you, and that's why I think it's important that the cultural impact assessment actually is put out there. My question relates to obviously the Ngā Aora Tupuna Trust. I'm just wondering whether we can partner with them to leverage some funding for when you read the CIA and the ideas that some of our mana whenua have about developing it, and they talk about the waharoa and those sorts of things. Is it some way we could extend, you know, like we talk about partnership all the time and the lack of funding that we have for these sorts of projects. Is there the opportunity there to extend the Ngā Aora Tupuna Trust to encompass Russell Park?
Yeah, through the chair, that's something that officers have discussed, and I know our chief executive Ross has talked about a similar approach. That's definitely something I'll note and explore. I know there's an important part of this. If the name goes ahead, that there's a piece of work to follow with signage and interpretive signage and telling the Maori and the European history through that, and that's definitely something that we can take away and look into further.
Just clarification, do we still have 2 councillors on Ngā Aora Tupuna Trust?
We have Councillor Nipiapatu, and is the councillor appointed one, and I am a trustee, not in my councillor role. Yeah.
So we have one person on the.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
One of the things that's noted in point 46 is signage updates in the area, and to reflect the new name. It actually needs to be noted there's actually not one sign on Russell Park currently that says it's Russell Park. Councillor Greer and I noted that, and that actually is no naming there. There's lots of other names around there from gateways, etc., that have been named but are memorialised, but there's actually no naming there. The second, and that was a statement, but the question I have is there, for framing how it's written, the option 1 recommendation is to undertake public consultation on the proposed name of Ruakū before council makes a decision. Could that be changed to or retain the current name? Because for me, it seems very leading that from around this table, we've already made that decision and we're going out to say, we want to change this and we want your yes or no.
Through the chair, I think that's an option for elected members to consider, and if there was a preference to take that approach.
Councillor Annan.
I would personally like to see us lead from the front with this, if,
Questions?
oh yeah, but you know, to answer that, that's my personal, we're the only ones that can sort of change that direction. So I would, yeah, like to state here and now that, you know, we lead from the front with the name change, and then if people have a huge reaction to it, then potentially we need to look else. It's different, yeah. Because I wasn't here when the cultural report was presented. Was it presented?
I'll seek clarification. I think it was part of the master plan.
Did you guys have was there a session on it?
We went to last week in Marae.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah. That's on, yeah.
No more questions. Thank you for being at the table and giving us this.
Thank you.
I'll scroll up instead of down. So I think we've got a recommendation in front of us.
I'm happy to move it.
Councillor Annan. It's the recommendation that's on the table, in the papers rather. The seconder. Councillor Byrne. Would you like to speak?
Well, I mean, this recommendation is sending it out now to have a conversation with our community about it. We've been formally asked for mana whenua to change the name back to its original name. And like Councillor Lawrence has said, there is actually no official signage there at the park. So this is an opportunity in the future to be able to not only recognise but its rich Māori heritage, but also there's going to have to be some recognition of the fact that the Russell Park, has been Russell Park for a very long time because it's a part of history, and you can't recognise one part of history and not the other. So we, you know, I think it's a really exciting place to be able to be in. And I think I'm really hopeful that when we go and have conversations with our community that like the Ngā Ara Tupuna concept, and the reason it was set up was to actually allow our citizens here in Central Hawke's Bay to learn of our rich Māori heritage here in Central Hawke's Bay. Ngā Ara Tupuna was originally birthed out of basically a few people saying that there is a huge, rich Māori heritage here, but if you drove through Central Hawke's Bay, you'd never ever know it. There was no evidence of it. And it was on that basis that we really sort of drove the Ngā Ara Tupuna concept to be able to really recognise that. And weaved in with that was education and honouring amazing local talent through Conrad Nepiaptu and that sort of stuff. And then it birthed into some work that was done at Central Lines, has been in is amazing stuff that's in the thing. So this is just one more step, I think, in the Ngā Ara Tupuna path. And I'm excited that more information will go out into our community to be able to really open and broaden our community's eyes to what was sitting under their nose all this time. And most of them, like me, before I knew about Puke Kaiho, were like, oh, I didn't even know that was even a thing. So I'm hopeful that this will be a really exciting project, and I'm interested in the comms, obviously long term, as to how we actually engage with our community, and happy to be a part of that.
Any further comments? Sorry, me. Oh, sorry, seconder. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's
okay. Obviously I was part of the Russell Park Master Plan, and this did come through there. So there has been you know, a series of conversations about the renaming of the park, and so it won't come as a surprise to many. We've also recently been part of the tourism refresh strategy, which said, you know, we're not just about wine in Hawke's Bay, but we've got a rich Māori heritage as well. So, you know, if we can bank on that, and people don't just pass through Central Hawke's Bay, but they actually you know, visit and stop and go up Pukekaiho and come down into Russell Park or Ruakaha, and Ruaka, and learn about the history of Central Hawke's Bay and the Russell side of that as well. And to Councillor Minahan's point, there's plenty of places in New Zealand that have two names, and people can recognise whatever name means something to them. So I think, if we can do this and respect mana whenua's wishes, I'm all for it. So thank you.
Any further debate? Councillor Greer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just further to Councillor Lawrence. I mean, let's not forget that Henry Russell was the founder of Waipukurau. So there is a rich history, and this is, it's quite sensitive, and there is history on the Maori side as well, and I get that. Pukekaiho is a glaring example of how well our history has been put out there, and as part of the Aramona Trust, they are going to follow in the same footsteps of preserving the Maori history on the coast with Ngātakere, and Ngātakere's wishes are that the settler history is also included in a Waparoa out there, which I think, coming back to Russell Park, if we can see that happen, I've been very much in favour of it, but I'd like to see the consultation document before it goes out on how the team proposed to do that.
I'm just checking the, based on that comment, undertake public directs off to report the outcomes of public consultation. So there is nothing in it as it stands to see the consultation document. Can I just have clarification on whether that would come back to us?
Well, we weren't planning to bring it back formally, but we can sort of circulate it. That would be
Informally around councillors.
And we're planning to undertake this work probably in November, rather than rush into it. Mr. Marshall's got some long planned leave in between times and gets back in early November. So we do have time to develop it up and to circulate it so you're comfortable with it. If that's
I think that would be good, so that we can get some feedback from councillors on that consultation document.
Please.
Yeah. Paddy.
Morena whānau. I just wanted to pull over and just acknowledge this kaupapa to us all, and acknowledge the mahi that's been done. I believe the CIA on this was done over 3 years ago, so for it to come back to being on the table has been heartwarming. That big movement we had with the Kapahaka festival in Waipukurau back in February was a beautiful acknowledgement of the rich whakapapa and history to us as tangata whenua. So I just wanted to mihi to all that's been done, the progress that we can make, the acknowledgement of whakapapa, the history, the stories, the pūrākau of what's happened to the First Nations people, and the beautiful learning that will come with that. So it's a reclamation, it's re-indigenizing our lands, and it's I see it as a beautiful positive move. It'll be a movement for CHB District Council to lead the way for others as well, going through these processes, and there's many happening around the motu. So tēnā koutou.
Thank you, Paddy. Councillor Minahan.
Yes, through the chair. Can I just have clarification? What was the option that was going put forward and seconded, please? Was it option 1 or option 2?
It is what the recommendation, so it's option 1.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you.
The recommendations that are on page 27.
Yeah, thank you. Can I just add a word?
Yes,
Thanks. I think for me, simply just I will support option one, simply announcing that we're giving it a new name. I think people would disagree and may feel the decision was imposed on them. So I think I am in now support of option one.
thank you. Option one being including the 5.
Oh, okay.
Option one was consult on the name. Option 2 was, she says, scrolling
Approve the
down,
name.
Just prove it.
to just approve it.
I don't know if you're
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, so I'd like to, you know, this isn't a decision to change the name. This is a decision to consult on the change of the name. Like many things, I've got family members that still call the big moanga on the other side of the island Egmont. And so there will be people that continue to call this park Russell Park if the name is formally changed, and that's okay. The background to the proposed name and echo what Piri said about the when we were at the Kapahaka regionals, the performance that came after Brian Morris's speech about Ruakuha was spine tingling and absolutely amazing. And at the end of the day, I actually really like the name Ruakuha. I think it's very cool. Besides the sad and awkward history that goes alongside it, the name is one that I think will be easily recognised. So I am in favour of this. The public consultation is a must. The master plan clearly says any change like that would need consultation. So we would be remiss, as Councillor Minahan said, to go with option 2. Any further debate? Right of reply, Councillor Anand. No. So we have, I'll just read the recommendations so we're clear that we've received the report. We note the proposal to undertake public consultation on the proposed name Ruakuha for the park known as Russell Park, and the legal descriptions follow that. 3, directs officers to undertake public consultation on the proposed name Ruakuha prior to council making a formal decision on the name. 4, directs officers to report the outcomes of public consultation back to council, including a summary of feedback received and a recommendation on whether to proceed with formally naming the park Ruakuha. 5, notes that if council subsequently resolves to approve the name Ruakuha, officers will undertake the statutory process under the Reserves Act 1977, including publication in the New Zealand Gazette to formally affect the name. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you for being online there for that, Ms. Cooper. So I'm going to page 35. We have our revenue and financing policy with Mr. Chamberlain.
Well, good morning, Chair and councillors. The paper that you have in front of you today is part of the development of the long-term plan. Councils around New Zealand are required to have a revenue and financing policy. This sets out how the various activities that councils undertake are funded. This year, the Department of Internal Affairs has proposed a change in the groupings of activities as councils report them. The idea is that all councils will report using the same groupings, and this will make it more transparent and easier to compare between councils. With the regrouping, this will also involve us changing our revenue and financing policy to reflect this new grouping. Council last did a full review of this revenue and financing policy back in 2021, where they built it from the ground up. In the 2024 LTP, minor adjustments were made, mainly around swimming pool inspections. With the changing landscape of councils potentially on the horizon with possible amalgamations, at the recent LTP presentations, where staff were given training on how to prepare the next LTP, the Auditor General suggested that this is the year that councils should be just doing a light touch on their revenue and financing policies, acknowledging that if the amalgamations do proceed and we do end up forming a unitary council, which is likely to be in year 2 of the next LTP, that this policy will need to be reviewed because it'll have to be an amalgamation of the 3 councils in our current Head Start process. That they also suggested that it wouldn't be wise to make radical changes and be significantly different from the other councils that are going to form part of this Head Start process. You'll see on page 37 a diagram that I tried putting together showing the old policy on the left and the old order of how things were grouped, and on the right proposed groupings under the DIA regime. Noting that the most significant change for this council is that for the first time we're going to show a emergency management readiness activity. We've previously had a civil defence activity, but it's just been treated as an overhead, whereas now it's going to be a rated activity. Suggestion is that this is rated through a uniform annual charge, which means that every property in the district wear the same charge regardless of the value of their property. This is similar to what Hastings Council is currently doing as well. The other one that is a change is, again, bringing out of what was previously an overhead, the communications department, and showing that as a separate cost centre and rating for that, and that's suggested to be rated as a general rate. What I have done is taken the 26-27 annual plan and said, if this policy had been in place when we set the rates, what impact would that have on the current ratepayers? And I've given you 3 examples there on page 38 and 39. One of being a house in Waipawa that is connected to our water network, and one being in Onga, which is not connected to our water network, and one being a farm. And you'll see that because we're not actually doing any new activities, we're just changing how we're rating for them, that actually the changes aren't that significant. For the Waipawa house, it would have meant a $3.14 saving. For the house in Onga, it would have meant an extra $36.87. And for the farm, it would have meant a savings of $107.79. You'll note that in all 3 cases, the UAGC, which is the uniform annual charge, has gone up by $34.02. That is the civil defence or the emergency management coming in. And the others have gone up and down depending on which rate you're looking at. That's because reshuffling of activities between different rate types. Happy to take the report as read. The recommendation is that this committee endorses the proposed changes and that they are wrapped up and included with the LTP when it goes out for consultation early next year, and that will just form part of the consultation pack that is publicly available.
Thank you, Mr. Chamberlain. I think we'll go to Councillor Minahan first. He's had his, is he aware he's got his hand up? Is that for a question now?
Sorry, no, not at this stage.
Councillor Moynihan, you can be part of this. You can turn your video off if you want to. You're not looking well. So if you're welcome to stay there, but you are allowed to turn your video off. You can just see him. He's struggling to hear us, and so just giving him permission to turn off his video if he wishes. Mayor Foley.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Just a little bit confused, Mr. Chamberlain, by the recommendation reads DIA changes are compulsory. It reads out in the paper, but then you give us the option to either endorse or reject. I'm guessing the compulsory part means that we in our best interest to.
Well, the compulsory part is that we have to do something. I've made a recommendation of how I would move the rates around if it was me making the decision. Obviously, council has the ability to make more substantive changes than what I've suggested. So when we were workshopping this the other day, there was some suggestion that we could look at land transport rates, for example, and look at land use types. Currently, neither Napier or Hastings do that. And obviously, if this has to change again in year 2, you'd really only be making that substantive change for 1 year. Happy to be guided by this table.
The comms side of it, I apologise if you said, I know it's now under general rates. What are our neighbours doing with have they previously had comms as an overhead like we did?
Most councils across New Zealand have had comms buried in overheads. The way that overheads work is that they are then spread across all the public facing activities. So they were rated for, but in a less transparent way. So now it's going to be visible what we spend on our comms department, and obviously the largest rate type is general rate. So that's where I've suggested it sits.
Are you aware of what Napier or Hastings have done with, I know emergency management is under UAGC for Hastings in particular. I don't know about Napier, but any idea what?
No, I'm not aware of exactly what they've done. This DIA changes is currently still in proposal. It's waiting to go through Parliament. So not every council is quite as advanced in their thinking as we are.
One more and then I'll go to Councillor Byrne. So we're assuming that the changes will happen as they do. What happens if they don't? This has to come back to us.
So it's been through Cabinet. Cabinet has released proactively the proposal. It's been out for public consultation. The consultation's closed, and we're just waiting to hear whether there's any desire to change from what they initially proposed. But what you see here is based on what they consulted on.
For process, would it be easier to add a number 3, giving a chief executive the delegation to adapt or minor amendments should that basically what we just did for?
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah. So we'll formulate that while Councillor Byrne asks her question.
Okay, this is in view of the simplifying local government, and you've said, you know, it would be silly of us to try and implement a new rate now with the view that we could be amalgamating in the future. Over the weekend, I actually looked at similar valued properties in Napier and Hastings compared with the one in Waipawa that you've given. And I've taken out water, which is a huge cost for our connected ratepayers in Central Hawke's Bay. And we hear constantly that, you know, our rates are way more expensive, and given that is mostly water. But when I take out water, Waipawa is about $1,900. Napier, removing water, is about $2,800. And Hastings is about $3,500. So what are they rating that we aren't? Because that's removing water, and all of those $630,000 properties, their rates are a hell of a lot more expensive than us.
So what have they got in their general rates in their UAGCs that we are not currently rating for?
I would have to study their annual plan to give a fulsome answer, but I do know that Napier, for example, has aquariums and the hot pools on the beach and more substantive campgrounds. So they've got a lot more activities than we have. Hastings has the Toy, has the new museum that they've just built. So my guess is that some of those nice to haves are the things that perhaps the smaller community hasn't got. They all come at a cost. But yeah, without studying line by line, that's just off the top of my head.
Yeah, so my question is, do we really want to align with Hastings and that? Yeah, anyway, I mean, that's just, to me, it seems more expensive to live there if you remove them.
Sorry, just taking a moment to bring Mr. McLeod up to speed with the third edition. There, are you happy with?
Yeah, no, it's just, yeah.
Any further questions? Councillor Anne and then Councillor Greer, I think.
Mine is probably more for Mr. McLeod. What is actually driving this legislative change for the comms to be more transparent? Is this just another way for the government to slam local government?
I probably wouldn't use those words. I think I don't know what they're thinking. I think there is perhaps a feeling in certain quarters that may have influenced the government thinking that councils spend quite a lot on communications and a desire to bring transparency to that. That would be my most neutral interpretation of the change. It is not a service that's provided for its own sake. It is provided to assist communicating with the community, but government has decided to introduce a set of regulations to more closely supervise how councils conduct their business, and have introduced changes to this policy with more explicit and compulsory activity groupings.
Sorry, Councillor Greer was next, I think.
Sorry, it was just a typo. I think, please can council staff change the name CHB Settlers Museum to Central Hawke's Bay Museum. It's been Central Hawke's Bay Museum for the last 5 years.
Noted.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne.
Through you back to comms. I'm just wondering though, can we break down, please, how much of our comms budget is spent on communicating government reform? Because when you think about how much we've just spent on simplifying local government, local water done well, and a lot of the other unfunded mandates that are coming through from central government, it would be interesting to know how much of our comms budget is spent on communicating something that's being driven from them. I would just be interested to know that. Is that something we can break down?
I think they would push back and say that we were told we didn't have to consult with SLG, but we felt we did.
I think that may not be. I'm not sure, Chamberlain, whether you have thoughts on the ability to do that within the revenue and financing policy, but I think when we are reporting on the activity under these activity classes, then I think there is the opportunity to do that.
I think that's important. I think we need to specify what under each classification, what the comms is being, because there's a hell of a lot. We don't communicate for the sake of communicating. There's always a reason.
Prizal is noting desire.
Just there to,
Yeah, it's because we like to send out fluffy stuff. Thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Chamberlain? No, thank you, Mr. Chamberlain. Oh, Councillor Minehan, thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. Just what I saw in option 2. So you're suggesting if we go with option 1, I won't be able to bring up the ideas of what the impacts of forestry, how I could address that. Is that what you're telling me?
The options are on page 40 for those who need them.
So it was just allows arising issues such as funding for dealing with impacts of forestry to be addressed. If I went with option 1, for going forward, because that wasn't something I had brought up to have a look into our long-term plan. If I go with option 1, that means my dealing with impacts of forestry would not be considered going into the long-term plan. Is that correct?
Correct. So going into this council's long-term plan, we would be taking the proposed policy that's attached to the document. Obviously, we will have another go at this, assuming that amalgamation continues, when we form the policy for the new unitary council, which potentially will be in year 2 of the LTP, so only 24 months away.
Thank you.
Councillor Byrne.
Just once again back to simplifying local government and the potential to align our rating with other councils. And I mean, would that see us funding things like Toy and in Central Hawke's Bay? Or are we not even at that discussion yet?
We're not at that discussion yet. Those are all things to be addressed through a funding, a revenue and financing policy for a unitary authority. We have at the moment to set an LTP that sets out service levels that we think are required for CHB for the next 10 years and how they'll be funded. These will go into, we'll set a signal for how that gets drawn together if a unitary authority does proceed. And then there'll be a reset process with all that to be addressed. There may be some discussion of it through the design and then the transition phase if things do go ahead. But we need to focus at the moment on what we're going to do if CHB keeps operating, and particularly for the next for the year from 1 July 27 through to every unitary authority takes effect.
I mean, my concern is I look at a Hastings property valued at 630,000. The general rate's 1841. Your AGC is 250, but there's something called community, and I'm sure it's called something community, something at 685. So, you know, that totals way more than what a Waipawa property is paying. And I'm just wondering, you know, I don't want to see, with water removed, us suddenly having to pay more for facilities that are based in the bay. And because we call Russell Park our premium park for Central Hawke's Bay. It's likely we won't have a premium park. Our premium parks will now be a Hawke's Bay regional park somewhere. And that's what's concerning me.
Yeah, I think that there will need to be a process for working through those things on a principal policy basis. And you will need to, if the unitary authority does proceed, there will need to be approach taken to what are local services and should there be a a local funding mechanism for that? And what are regional services, and should there be a regional funding mechanism for that? And should there be differentials for distance and all of those sorts of things? Just also bear in mind though that there should be advantages for Central Hawke's Bay in spreading the costs you're having to meet from a small population base at the moment, like land transport costs, over a larger catchment. Now that all has to be designed, but it will be difficult to pick and mix things that you want to share because it's an advantage and things that you don't want to share because it's a disadvantage. But that's all still to come. And at the moment, we're on the basis of, or if we're continuing as Central Hawke's Bay, we need one of these policies. We need one of these policies for the next, for 1 July 2027 onwards. So we need to focus that here and now and ensure that we're in a good position through the transition to consider those issues and look at the implications of them.
But then you say, you know, it's a pick and mix and we don't want to, but we've actually been disadvantaged in the fact that with water has already gone and that is ring fenced. So
it's ring fenced at the moment. I think I've said before, and not wanting to predetermine what other bodies do, but we're certainly focusing some attention on this. Is we are going into a price path regulation framework where the Commerce Commission will be looking at pricing, and that may mean that the current ring fencing becomes less viable over time. I'm not saying that it's what will happen, but my understanding of some of those mechanisms is that some of that ring fencing may become less tenable over time.
it just feels like we've missed the beat for urban, but if, you know, for the rural who pay the lion's share of the land transport, this could actually be a winner for them if we have to fund things like the Patonga Bridge. But yeah, thank you.
Just for clarification, that community covers things that are in other areas for us. So it's community services, parks, community development, public spaces, events, recreational facilities, and resource management, district planning, processing and monitoring of resource consents, and environmental management. So it's kind of takes stuff that we've got in other parcels. Is that a fair?
Yeah. So what you've just described sounds more like, if you look at the diagram on page 37, sounds like it's a mixture of place and open spaces, parks and reserves, community and recreational facilities, and possibly regulatory as well.
Yeah, but they're still paying $1,500 more than us on the same valued property. But yeah, thank you. I think I've made.
We have recommendation in front of us. Would anyone like to move with the addition of number 3?
What was the addition?
Madam?
What was 3?
It's on the screen. It's just adding the. Just that was a suggestion from me, based on Mr. Chamberlain saying that this is still actually going through a process. So if all of a sudden there's a change, it doesn't have to come back to us. A minor amendment based on what the government does with it.
So this is based on what the DIA have consulted on, but obviously we haven't had the consideration of the feedback yet. So if there was a minor change, it gives Mr. McLeod the ability to tweak that without having to bring it back to a formal thing.
Do we need something there that says subject to DIA?
I
mean, government, that's enough.
I think it's okay. And I note, Mr. Chamberlain, that this will be subject to consultation as part of the suite of LTP documents. So you will have another go at it when that consultation feedback, if any, comes back.
Nobody's jumping up, so I'll move 1, 2 and 3 there. Councillor Burns second. My comment is just that we're required to have one of these. DIAs change the we're rearranging the deck chairs. I'm not saying we're sinking yet, but not saying we're sinking out there yet. But we've got such a short time frame before we join with our neighbours, whatever SLG process looks like next year or the year after. I think leaving it as it is I'm happy with that. But changing those groupings, I think where we've moved things to, appreciate Mr. McLeod's comments about comms actually just being that much more transparent, and that can only be a good thing at the end of the day. Councillor Burns is seconder. Councillor Margaret.
Yeah, well, we've got to meet DIA's requirements, but I think it's quite right that the emergency management should be a UAGC. It affects everyone, so everyone should be paying for it evenly. And at this stage, we're on a lose-lose with the water entity, and the way that simplifying local governments is. We've just been talking about how it's going to be rated. So it makes it just so important to get round the negotiating table once we start refining the amalgamation process. So we're in the best possible space, because at the moment we're not. So yeah.
Councillor Annan.
Yeah, I was thinking that along the same lines as well. The most important part will be the next stage as we're facing the future Central Hawke's Bay District Council, and what we advocate for our people, but reflecting in the fact that if things were to change, the one Enwire did come into our amalgamation proposal, their forestry rating is actually quite a leading example of something that we could probably do here. But yeah, said that we always dreamed, and pick up on Councillor Monahan's question, it was always our dream to be able to start to to-do with this sort of stuff, and to start to see new ways of revenue and financing and things like that. There wasn't many levers we could pull, but yeah, we're now having to have to wait. But as like Margaret said, it'll be about that getting around that negotiating table, and making sure in the next stage, if it goes ahead, that we're best representing our people, and learning from other districts as to how we can make this work for us.
I would just note through you, sorry, Chair, if you really wanted to do work on some of those funding differentials or targeted rates, you could instruct us to do that. It's just that will be reasonably significant pieces of work, and there is a limited time frame for them to run if we do go down the simplifying local government tree authority path, and you can't. Like if you were looking at a targeted rate, for instance, for a particular bridge, or introducing something to impact land use for forestry purposes, you can't just do that in isolation. You need to look at the impacts of those across your entire rating system, and whether there are other similar assets or services or land that should be considered for the same thing. So. But we're not saying you have to wait. If you really, really wanted to instruct us to do it, it will be quite a big piece of work, and it will probably mean focusing on that at the expense of other things. But I don't want you to think you couldn't instruct us if you really wanted to.
I know, I'm quite aware of how that can work, but in the course of process, we even today are adopting 2 policies before we've actually adopted our strategic approach. So I'm not hearing anything from this table that would direct that approach at this stage. Of that's certainly so yeah, I think where you've taken it, and where we're at is exactly the cues that you've taken from this table, because I've not heard anything that would suggest that we've suggested that and you haven't done it.
Councillor Moynihan did bring that up in workshop. He did talk about the forestry one. His question about option 2 was based on that. I remember when Councillor Greer, ex-Councillor Richmond and myself were almost brand new in 2019. One of the first things we did was a rating review, and it didn't, as a new speaking for myself as a new councillor, it didn't really make a hell of a lot of sense. And I wish that we'd, knowing what we know now, to do a review, but there's so many changing platforms that we're trying to deal with. But we do have a motion currently on the table. So if we did want to follow that up further, it would take we would take this motion forward, or an amendment as such. Somebody had one. Is there any further debate on the motion that's currently?
Just really to add to that debate and conversation, Chair, I think the best approach is, we're in a really difficult space because there's things we either want to do or might want to do, but we're just not quite sure whether it's efficient to go down certain paths because of changes coming. I think the best approach going forward is to, as soon as we find out the direction from Wellington, we've got 2 busy years ahead of working with Napier and Hastings at this stage. And if there's alignment around some of these things that we want to do, then let's work together so that we hit the ground running when the new unitary starts up. But let's not go down, I guess, paths of lots of work that's going to conflict with where those other councils are. So I think there's definitely opportunities, but let's just check we're aligned with the other councils, and then we can work on it together. And I've actually got a lot of confidence that there will be a lot of alignment. So I think that's the best way to proceed.
Any further debate on the motion on the table? So just coming back to me as the mover, I wrote down that changes wouldn't be worth it as they might only be in place for 12 months. But also hear that we shouldn't let go of that wish to keep on top of the changes that could be made in the negotiations, as said by Councillor Muggeridge and Mayor Foley. So I will put the motion that the Planning and Investment Committee receives the report, endorses the proposed changes to Council's revenue and financing policy to align with DIA's new compulsory activity groupings, agrees to consult on changes to the policy as part of the main LTP consultation document in 27, and that we delegate to the Chief Executive to approve minor administrative or editorial amendments that change the intent of the revenue and financing policy. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Going to page 70 of the agenda, we have Ms. Harvey with the strategic direction for our long-term plan. Page 70.
Hi everyone. Through you, Chair. Today I'm seeking the committee's endorsement of the proposed strategic direction for the 27-37 long-term plan, and a recommendation that it be adopted by council at the next available council meeting. This long-term plan, as we know, is being developed during a period of significant change. We're facing affordability pressures, uncertainty around government reforms, funding challenges, and climate-related pressures, etc. And then also the need to ensure that Central Hawke's Bay maintains a strong local voice and identity throughout all these challenges. Given those challenges, elected members and officers identified the need to refresh council's current strategic direction, just to ensure that it remains relevant for the decade ahead. So The proposed direction has been informed through a number of workshops with yourselves as elected members. And in those workshops, it was explored that the major trends and challenges that were facing the district. And from that process, there were 4 key areas that emerged as priorities. One was affordability, another was effective and sustainable service delivery. The third was transparent trade-offs between affordability, services, expectations, and long-term sustainability. And the fourth was around strong local voice, representation, and advocacy. So a point for the committee is that this direction has been deliberately designed to be practical rather than aspirational. And its purpose was to help to test the future long-term plan decisions by asking questions such as, does this represent value for money? Is it affordable? Does it support community outcomes? Have the trade-offs been clearly identified and explained? And does it strengthen our local voice and ability to influence decisions that will affect the district into the future? It's a point to note is that the proposed direction also retains the intent of Council's current Our DNA approach. It does continue the principles of working together, planning ahead, customer excellence, and thinking smarter, while placing just a bit more emphasis on things like affordability, innovation, advocacy, and enabling community success. So the recommendation in front of you today is there's 3 options presented. One is to endorse the strategic direction and recommend adoption by Council. Second was endorse with amendments, and the third was not to endorse and request further work. The recommendation for you today is to endorse option 1, which is the endorse strategic direction and recommend adoption by Council. So this option provides a clear and agreed framework for progressing the next phase of the long-term plan development, supports consistent decision-making and trade-offs discussion, and maintains momentum from the workshops process. So in closing, the report asks you to endorse the strategic direction, and doing so will provide clarity and direction for officers and elected members as we move into next stages of long-term plan development. I'm happy to take any questions on the report. Okay.
Just recognising Councillor Annan's earlier comments about policy before strategic, and just acknowledge that perhaps that's something that I should have picked up in agenda preview, that this should have been first up and the policy to follow. So take that on board. I think we've had a lot of discussion on these in workshops. Any questions for Ms. Harvey? Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, mine, I acknowledge that, and if I had come to the agenda preview, I would have been able to pick up on it as well. So it's not just sitting with you. Page 72, it says, I thank you for the inclusion and the recognition of our request to keep our DNA in there. And around wanting to keep our core principles around working together, customer excellence, and planning ahead and thinking smarter. Just wondering though, the statement, the line under that says that we want to express them in a more outward facing and relevant to 2027 to 2037. What is different? What's going to be different for the next 10 years? What is more outward facing and relevant compared to what we've done in the past?
I think from memory from the discussions that we had in workshops as well, it was more around like focusing on the changes that we've got coming ahead, being more relevant for 27-37, whereas in the last period when the strategic direction was developed, there was a more of an aspirational lens. Things were we were in a different space for looking forward for those 10 years as what we are now, and that's sort of what's meant by that statement.
Do you feel as officer that's leading this, that you haven't heard from us that we're looking for aspiration?
I believe, yeah, I think we have. I mean, there's always got to be aspiration, but I think it's also facing what we're facing. There has got to be an element of realism in that as well, and that we needing to be signalling that, I guess, to our communities that yes, there is, and I think in some of the wording that we've got in here, there is that little bit. There is still aspiration within those wording, but it's not as, it's sort of more based in realism, I think, is where I'm coming. And it sets a direction also for staff who are able to see how, when they are putting forward projects or setting up planning for services, it gives them the direction very clearly on how this council what this council expects going into that, which sets a really good basis for the long-term plan and the next steps that are coming, which are things like, which we're talking about this afternoon or later on, the infrastructure and finance strategies, the asset management plans that staff are currently working on, and then also when we start getting into the actual development of budgets and things like that.
Any further questions? Thank you. Would somebody like to move the two recommendations that are there? Mayor Foley?
Happy to move, Chair.
Do I have a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Anand. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would. Look, a big day for this council, newly formed last elections. And I felt a big part of what we needed to do was reset the strategy for the times we're in. If you look at the vision statement, enabling community success, that should be any vision of any strategy at any time, but how you get there and how you do that is quite relevant to the times we're in. And I think we all appreciate that we are in a different time now to when the last strategy was set. And so just really happy with just all the effort that's gone in from around this table, from staff that have assisted us to get to this point, and the strategic outcomes that we've landed on, I think, are very relevant to what we've heard from our community and very relevant to achieving success going forward, if only for a short couple of years, but nonetheless still very relevant. So happy to support this. Thank you, Jeff.
Seconder, Councillor Anand?
Yeah, I want to acknowledge the hard work trying to navigate this new time. Thankfully, I counted probably as a count out, we've probably got about 54 years of combined experience around this table who have had to lead through change and have had to lead through the realism that we are facing at the moment. I reflect on a time where we had to face the facts while also having to deal with COVID, and then we were quickly confronted with a road to recovery. So I'm confident that we have got a council around this table and leadership around this table that will be able to confidently take this plan and help us to face the future and make sure that all of the things and the policies that need to then be amalgamated and realigned and all that sort of stuff, that we will be definitely in a place where we can hit the ground running for Central Hawke's Bay. Whatever happens, whether we get amalgamated or whether the government changes and probably all drops away, I think we're in a really strong position to be able to face the future and the realistic things that are in front of us. And so, yeah, happy to support this. But as I say, really important to keep that DNA stuff there. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Any further comments? Right, people in the room, Councillor Choke, Councillor Lawrence, anything? I also speak in support of it, just the outcomes. This all just helps us with the trade-offs and everything that we've already talked about this morning. I think the previous strategic direction was one that was done. It was us, what we wanted for ourselves, for the future. It was all about us. And now it's all about how we keep us in the next iteration. So I like it. No further comments. Right of reply, Mayor Will. So the Planning Investment Committee receives and endorses strategic direction for the 27-37 long-term plan report dated 20th of August 26 and recommends council adopts strategic direction. So obviously we cannot adopt that. It has to go back to council. So seems a roundabout way, but it's not in our delegations to reach that level of importance in this committee. And so, yeah, hopefully you've all read it through. Sorry, I'm getting into, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So that will come back to council.
The beginning of October.
Beginning of
I can't
October.
remember. I think it might be the 3rd.
Thank you. I was going to say, make sure that, because this is coming up to us again and again, so we're running out of chances to actually change or have effect to this, rather than relitigating it all the time. Apologies for speaking over your view. We are going to break for morning tea. Thank you, Ms. Savi. We moved the agenda so that the two items were together, and now with our wee power cut and some good discussion around the table, we've just delayed a wee bit. Mr. McLeod had to go to another wee meeting, so even though his shoes have been well filled momentarily, we will break for morning tea, and we will be back at 10:45. Welcome back. We're going to item 76, page 76 on the agenda, the long-term plan project status. Ms. Harvey again.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. This report provides the committee with the progress update on the development of Council's 27-37 long-term plan, and just presents the latest project dashboard for the period June to July. The purpose of this report is to give committee members visibility of the overall program progress, key achievements, emerging risks and upcoming decision points. Overall, the program has now moved from phase 2 strategic analysis into phase 3 development. The project remains broadly on track, as you'll see from the dashboard, with a sort of a green amber status. While there's several areas requiring active monitoring, there are currently no significant concerns that would prevent delivery of the long-term plan. We've successfully closed phase 2 and completed 12 of the 16 deliverables planned, and the remaining 4 have been carried forward into phase 3 and are being managed alongside the current work program. The next reporting period will focus on completing asset management plans and progressing the financial and infrastructure strategies, refining some of the significant forecasting assumptions, advancing the supporting policies, and preparing the foundations for consultation and budget development. So in summary, we've successfully transitioned into phase 3 when we remain broadly on track, and we're progressing now through quite a critical period where the strategic decisions are now being translated into the detailed content and financial planning that is required for the LTP. I'm happy to take any questions on my report from members. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Harvey? You will.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Just on the budget, we had an earlier paper talking about the overheads from water that would obviously be stranded. So is that in itself not creating budget issues, or is there confidence that staff have that in order?
So we haven't got to the budgeting stage yet. So the budget that I'm reporting in here is the budget for developing the long-term plan. So it's about the budgeting to get to the process through this process. That's what I'm reporting on here. So what you're talking about is the budgeting and the preparations of the budgets, which and preparing the foundations for that, which will be coming up, and there'll be lots of discussion around that for sure. And yes, you're right there. That probably will be one of the pressures that we have going into this long-term plan.
The question relating to the audit one, was there a, apologies for not looking this up beforehand, but the LGNZ remit about the auditing process being lifted or lightened or made easier or removed based on the uncertainty with SLG, is that?
Yeah. So through you, Chair, I've recently attended an LTP forum, and whilst there's been nothing come out in legislation, we were told very quite emphatically at that forum that there would be no regulatory relief for this LTP. That this LTP is even more significant for being, having been prepared and being audited and everything going into the simplifying local government reforms. And also just with the time period and with what the time period that it's left between now and when Parliament rises, there's not time to pass that legislation. They are really focused on the rates capping legislation and the resource management legislation of getting that passed. It's unlikely that we will see any legislative relief for going forward until probably about May, is what they expressed to us at that forum.
The auditing, I assume, comes into the budget that you have for the RTP process.
Correct.
Is that any idea of what percentage of your budget is that auditing?
So at the moment, we haven't had that discussion with the auditors. I'm waiting on their engagement planning document, which will have what they're proposing for the fees to be and how that's going to be worked out. So that's something that we haven't actually received that from them yet, but I have a meeting coming up with them, so that will be obviously something that we discuss fairly soon to try and get that in place, so we know what we've got coming up.
Okay. Any other questions? I've got Councillor Minahan with one in the meantime.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mine was regarding about audit and auditors. So the arrangement with them, how detailed will that be? Will it be a costly exercise? Will it be a brush through? How detailed do they go through?
Through the Chair, we're yet to understand what the key focus will be. They did present, the Auditor General's staff did present at the LTP forum that I was at, and they are in the process of, at the moment, of determining what things that they will be looking at and what things are key for them. But as we haven't yet seen their planning documentation, I can't really comment on what their focus will be at this point.
Any further questions for Ms. Harvey? No, thank you. Thank you for the report. Would someone like to move that we receive the long-term plan project status report dated today? Councillor Byrne, seconder. Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak? Anyone like to speak? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Page 82 of our agenda, the land transport update prior to NZTA submission. Welcome to the table, Mr. Swinburne. Welcome back, Mr. Kimbeck.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Good morning, councillors. So yes, just a report today on our Land Transport Asset Management Plan, or AMP. The AMP itself supports two connected processes. So it supports council's 27 to 37 long-term plan, of course, and our funding proposal, ZTA, as part of the 2027 to 2030 National Land Transport Program. We in Central Bay have a large and widely spread transport network, generally lower volume, with around 60% of our road network carrying fewer than 100 vehicles per day. We're maintaining that large network for a relatively small population and rating base. Our assets are aging, construction and maintenance costs are rising, and the funding available does not allow us to maintain every road, bridge or transport asset to the same standard. How are we going to manage these challenges? Well, aligned with the asset management policy that was adopted today, our proposed approach is to be targeted rather than uniform. In simple terms, this means putting available funding where deterioration or failure would have the greatest effect on things like safety, community, network resilience, economic activity, and of course the long-term cost of maintaining the whole network. What this means is that assets that might be of a similar age or condition may receive different treatments because their importance and their risk are varied. Overall, the condition and the standard of the network will become more varied. Critical routes and structures generally will receive earlier planned work. Lower use and lower volume roads may need to accept localised repairs, more uneven surfaces and isolated defects, longer time periods between renewals, restrictions if needed, and sometimes work being deferred. These are deliberate trade-offs to protect the most important connections while keeping the program affordable. It's important to note that this targeted approach does not remove council's responsibility to keep the full network safe, and that is of course our top priority. In the paper you'll see that there's some figures mentioned. These are obviously, they are drafted at this point in time, but they'll be submitted to NZTA by the end of the month. Within the 3-year program is approximately a $43 million spend, compared with approximately $42.6 million over the last 3 years. This is a small increase, about 1%. And it's important to note that it's not a broad brush increase. It is a reprioritisation of where we spend the money. Obviously, at the bottom line, there's a pretty big difference, and that relates primarily to the inclusion of proposed renewals for a couple of our bridges, one of those being Tongara, and there's some further information being shared on workshop today. It is important to note that those bridge projects are not fully approved or funded, and they remain subject to both council decisions and NZTA approval. The AMP itself records the gross cost of the program. It is fundamentally a funding application, and it's important to note that NZTA obviously are big in how we fund the land transport activity, currently funding 59% of maintenance operations. Like I said, we will be submitting this to NZTA by the end of the month, by the 28th. It's important to note that there's a whole process that has to happen after that. If NZTA make a decision that doesn't align with what we've proposed in this paper, then there will need to be obviously further work and further discussions at this table about how we approach that. Lastly, just noting today's report is for information. Councils are not being asked to approve this expenditure or any change to service levels today. The committee is being asked to receive the report and note that the AMP supports the long-term plan and NZTA's investment proposal, our NZTA investment proposal, and of course that expenditure will remain subject to future decisions. Our next step is to submit that plan, as I've mentioned, by the 28th, and align the program with the long-term plan as we receive feedback from NZTA and some of those funding decisions become clearer. Otherwise, I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Annan.
From memory, the fire rate decision and the adoption of the annual plan didn't always align. Is that still the case?
Through you, Chair, yes, that is still the case.
So in reality, we could adopt an annual plan based on the current far rate and be told that it's different.
So through the chair, we're expecting to receive some correspondence from NZTA in the short term, very soon, about what that far rate may look like. My understanding of the process following that is that we submit this to NZTA by the end of the month. We have a further opportunity to adjust it, I believe, in December, but we do not hear a result from that as part of the NLTP normally until, I believe, August 2027, which will obviously be after Council is asked to adopt the long-term plan.
Councillor Byrne and then Councillor Moynihan.
So is every council in New Zealand currently submitting to this? So it's a national wash up. So what are we expecting? Is there any indication what could happen with our fire rate? I mean, my feel is it could go down.
Through the chair, I'll answer maybe the first part and then leave Mr. Kinvig to speak to the second part of that question. But yes, so every road controlling authority is currently submitting this type of information into NZTA. So obviously they can undertake their planning processes as part of their NLTP. And in terms of the funding assistance rate, Mr. Kinvig might like to speak to that.
Yeah, through you, Chair, we've had a discussion with the Regional Director for NZTA, and although we don't have any details at this stage, there is a signal there that it may well go down to what we don't know yet, but we're waiting on that information.
Just further to that, what they've also put off, the government has also put off their policy statement, which pushes back all the RLT, regional land transport plan stuff, which then pushes back. Yeah, so it's just a delay, and not knowing what's happening with the far rate is just one of the annoying factors. Councillor Moynihan.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. Councillor Byrne answered my question, so well done. But for me, if there's an indication that the far rate may drop, do you think there's any projects that we may need to be brought forward to get that 59%?
Oh, chocolate fish.
Would you like time to think about that response?
Through you, Chair, our most significant project is Patangata Bridge. But what we are looking, and we're looking to get hopefully 89% far on at least a portion of that, because that was damaged in the cyclone. And with the balance being funded by our regular FAR, we're not clear yet on one whether NZTA will do that 89% on a portion of it, because they've not formally approved that, and we don't yet know what the balance will be, what far rate will apply to the balance of that expenditure. So there's quite a lot of ambiguity at the moment around that.
Would one assume that if it was already important to us, it's already in the current program? Other projects that are under the 59?
Through you, Chair. So yes, I was going to add to that. That's obviously in the last NLTP we had an approved set essentially amount of funding split up amongst a number of different work categories that we are essentially working on expending this year. That is approved for a 3-year period. And we are essentially limited in terms of the NZTA funding component outside of special projects like the recovery program to what was approved in that NLTP. So probably to answer Councillor Moynihan's question, there is limited scope to alter the program to maximise the current fire rate, because we are limited by what NZTA have approved back in 2024, and then obviously subsequently for the 27-28 year onwards, for the 2030. Limited by what they approve in the current NLTP at whatever the revised fire rate is, if it is revised.
My question relates to the reduction in environmental maintenance. Just reflects new contract rates, creates risk if there is a requirement for large tree removal. that risk is high. There are a lot of large trees needing removal. Is there any concern about that?
Through you here, sorry, I'm just looking at the actual numbers.
WC 121, if that helps, down 14%. Creates risk if there is a requirement for large tree removal. It seems one of the things that we hear about all the time is the state of the vegetation on our road corridor.
So yeah, so apologies through you, Chair. I think that the reality there is that that's obviously been done to try and balance the program as much as we can and manage affordability. The reality is that the actual dollars associated with that do not even start to make a dent in the issue associated with large tree removal. And therefore that is obviously an option that we have, and we can take feedback on that and potentially adjust before we submit to NZTA. But the overriding point there would be that we would need a significant uplift in that budget if we were intending to tackle large tree removal. And obviously, again, we're happy to take the feedback on that, but we don't see that as a significant.
14% seems like a lot, but it's of a small number to start with. Yeah. My other question was related to the routine drainage maintenance increases. What does that look like?
Yeah, so through you, that probably reflects the state of the network, and in terms of what we have seen with respect to things like climate change, and the weather that we've experienced over the last sort of maybe 4 to 5 years, and a focus on making the network as resilient as possible. That covers all manner of things from culvert clearing through to clearance of the swale drains, more regular basis, basically to optimize the performance of the existing network, but obviously a targeted focus on drainage to improve the network's overall.
Remember in years gone by, a lot of complaints about culverts being blocked on rural roads, but it's actually the farmers or landowners' culvert driveway into a paddock that is blocked, which isn't part of the land transport network. Do they fall into this increase?
Yeah, through you, Chair, what we tend to do in those situations is kind of work with landowners where possible, and at times they will clear their own drains. And there have been occasions where on critical routes like Elstop Road, where we've been more proactive, and we've actually cleared the drains all the way out to the river. But generally speaking, landowners are required under the law to maintain their own drainage to make sure the whole system works.
Get some nice comms around that would be good. I know I get phone calls about blocked culverts when they're actually the landowner's culvert that's blocked. I will lift my sights back up to the helicopter and get out of the drain. Any other? Councillor Graham.
Just one of the forecasted achievement of circa 3% of sealed roads being resealed. That doesn't even cover the problem roads we've got, does it? The 3%. So we've got a safety issue with those roads.
Through the Chair, we don't necessarily have a safety issue. That just reflects the percentage of the sealed network with which we intend to resurface every year. I think the point that maybe is worth noting in that is that's a classic example, a great example of the pressures that we're under. So we're seeing an uplift in the budget, but not an increase in the amount of work that's able to be delivered or forecasted to be delivered for that budget, simply to do with the rising cost of completing that work. That keeps us on track with what we're currently doing, but does not start to reduce the renewal backlog.
So priority goes to those roads that are well overdue for resealing.
Through you, Chair, the priority goes to the roads where it has the most provides the most value and the most benefit to the overall network, which generally speaking will be critical routes, high volume roads, or on occasion roads where the seal surface starts to create a safety risk.
And that safety risk is decided by a metric somewhere?
Through you. So yeah, the safety risk would be determined on a number of factors, including technical judgment, But yes, there are a number of metrics that we have, data that we have available to us, things like crash statistics, things like skid resistance, seal texture, surface texture. There's a lot of data that we have available to us to make an informed decision on that.
Through you, Chair, just to on the ceiling target, one of the most significant impacts, medium to long term, of not sealing the 7 to 9% is increased maintenance costs. So not achieving, not minimizing whole of life cost, because we're not maintaining the waterproof layer, which then affects the pavement, which then drives potholes, and if left, will then drive rehabilitation, which we don't have the funding for. So the reason we seal is just to maintain that waterproof layer. But one of the complexities is when we end up with too much seal, 7 layers, 5 layers of seal, we then have to rehabilitate, but we're only rehabilitating 0.15% of the network when we should be rehabilitating 1 to 2%. So it drives up costs in the medium to long term by not renewing at that right level.
Some other councils around the country, I can't think of who at the moment, are reversing some of their more far-flung sealed roads to shingle. Gore, is it? Should have known that. Is that a possibility under this? Is that a guidance that would need to come from this table? Is that something that is possible, thought of under our prioritisation?
Yeah, through you, Chair. It's a council decision. We're certainly signalling that effectively in not only the asset management policy but also the asset management plan. But there's no definite decision about converting roads back to unsealed. That definitely looks like it's the direction at the moment based on what we see, because we do have a backlog in structures, bridges, as well as sealed network. So it seems to make sense in the medium term, but of course that's a council decision.
Councillor Byrne.
I'm just wondering, rather than returning them to shingle, could we actually, when we're rehabilitating, just actually leave it a shingle layer? Is that something that we, rather than go to the, return it to seal then? Is that something that councils are doing?
Through you, Chair, yeah. So there's a process to go through from a technical perspective if we were ever going to essentially change a level of service for a particular road, and we would obviously be managing, sort of consider that like an end of life asset plan, where you manage the deteriorating asset through to the end of its effective life in a way that is safe, before you then potentially did something to permanently change that service level. So each specific asset would have a bit of a plan as to how you would manage that deterioration over the last stages of its life before you potentially changed it to something else.
Pettit Valley Bridge. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Petongata and Pettit Valley are the two bridges in there. I assume Petongata is most of that 2000% increase. But what is?
Yeah, so through you, Pettit Valley Bridge is one of our vulnerable structures. So we have a vulnerable structures list, and it's a posted bridge. Currently, it is posted at 60% of Class 1. However, recent engineering assessments have put into question whether that posting remains appropriate. In the short term, we have significantly increased the monitoring on that bridge. So we're doing regular 3-monthly inspections to determine how fast that bridge is deteriorating, or if it is deteriorating. But yeah, that is the reason for that bridge's inclusion. The potential worst case scenario based on the current structure is that it would be very, very limited in what it could carry, effectively significantly altering the land use beyond it. Hence why we have elevated it for potential renewal. It is off the top of my head, it's over 100 years old, I believe, from memory. About 30-metre 3-span. Yeah, recent engineering assessments have questioned its structural stability.
I did confirm with Mr. Kimmick, it is the one closer to the highway, not the one further up. So there's a dozen farms up there. What does 60% of class one actually mean? Does stop trucks can't? Can?
Yeah, I think I'm probably not placed to answer that level of technicality about class one vehicles. Generally, I believe it's up to 46 tons.
Is class one, yes.
Gross vehicle mass. It'll be 60% of that. But then there's further detail around things like axle loading.
And it's a no exit.
That's a no. That's the only essentially becomes critical in that respect for everyone who lives past that bridge. It's the only way in and out of Peanut Valley Road.
What band did you say?
30 metre.
Any other questions related to, so this, from now on, this goes to NZTA now and goes through its process?
Correct.
Any further questions? Thank you, team. Would somebody like to move that we receive the report that notes that the AMP is the evidence base for Council's land transport investment proposal to NZTA, and that for the land transport budgets to be considered through the long-term plan, notes that final council expenditure remains subject to decisions through the long-term plan and to NZTA approval and allocation through the 2730 NLTP. That's the recommendation that's in our papers. Would anyone like to move that or something other? Lee Foley. Councillor Greer, would you like to speak? Councillor Greer, would you like to speak?
Fine.
Would anyone else like to? I'd actually just like to say that when I first came on council, we never saw any of this. Went to NZTA and all of a sudden we found out how much money council was getting from NZTA and had no part in this process. And so I just thank the team for that has evolved over the last 7 or 8 years. And thank you for that process and allowing us to be rightly so involved at this level. Right of reply? No. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Look forward to good news on the far. Page 88 of the agenda. Oh, date of next meeting. Am I on the right page? We missed one. No. Yay. Would someone like to move that the next Planning and Investment Committee be held on Thursday, the 15th of October, 2026? Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak? All those in favour, please say aye.
Right.
Against? Carried. Thank you to those online watching the meeting. Live streaming and recording will now stop. We won't have morning tea. It's a public workshop, so the live streaming will stop, but we are still open to the public here in Rotanafa Street in Waipawa, should you wish to come in and be part of our workshop. Thank you.